Hey there, this is Adrienne Lopez, the Integrative Awareness Coach, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 48 of Lifting the Veil podcast, the podcast where we look at the construction of consciousness, what it means to be a fully aware, realized human being, the different elements that affect our consciousness, and how we grow and understand the great mystery called the self and consciousness. Today I wanted to talk to you about the archetypal energy of the divine feminine. And of course, when you speak about the divine feminine, it's never separate from its counterpart, the divine masculine. Now, these aren't necessarily genders, but energies in the psyche have to do with the way we use energy in our life energy, in fact, and the ways we've been trained to focus and use our energies, and the real exclusion of a more feminine relationship to energy. And so a lot of times I talk about the elements of consciousness and psyche through my own personal experience, because of course that's the best framework I have, my own personal experience, and it always helps to see real life embodiments of these energies and how they unfold. So about 3 years ago now, I guess 2017, maybe 4 years ago, right around then, 3 to 4 years ago, I started feeling this deep calling to connect more deeply with my heart. And really what was behind that was a deep longing for freedom and ease and play, and shifting the way that I related to myself, because it wasn't producing the kind of results that I wanted in my life, and I didn't feel like I was fully living or expressing the truth of who I was. And so at that time, I came into contact with a yoga retreat center called Hridaya Yoga. And at the time, they have a retreat center in Mexico. And so I filled out an application to attend their month-long yoga retreat program. And I knew that it was based on Advaita Vedanta, which is the yogic science of non-duality, which I had been coming into contact with. But I wasn't so familiar with the term Hridaya, which is actually a Sanskrit term which is related to the secret chamber of the heart. And it's secret because most people aren't aware that this energy center is available and that it's there, or how to access it. And it's related to the divine feminine, which has been largely repressed and cut out of creation stories, creating stories that have to do with creating through life energy, through the Shakti energy, which is very much part of a yogic philosophy, and other Eastern traditions, the yin and the yang, to have balance, which is the basis of integrity or wholeness, and at the foundations of well-being and health in our bodies. It is the law of nature, and we are a product of nature. We are nature. Our bodies are constructed out of the elements of the earth, and they return to those elements once our spirit leaves the body. And so our deep connection with nature has been excluded, where we have become the masters of nature, separate from her, although this isn't necessarily the true case. And it has caused a disconnection from the self, a level of suffering because it's imbalanced and it's not in alignment with the blueprint of the full blueprint of our humanity. There's pieces missing, and as I've shared with clients, it's hard to know if you're missing something if you've never had it. And so I had this longing in my heart, and I was called to go to Mexico in the retreat center, where I had a huge heart opening, which was very much connected to water. The water in the form of tears. And this water was very cleansing, it was purifying, and it was waiting to be expressed. And I didn't know a lot of it was there, actually, until it started to come to the surface. When my heart opened, all this water poured out that had been restricted there in my heart, in my emotional body. And I had this huge heart opening. And then I went back to my life and went back to the way I was living, which was largely through the paradigm I inherited, which was creating through force, forcing myself to do things in the service of being productive, in the service of reaching certain results. But I still had that beautiful water tone in my body and my heart, and eventually I again was called to return to the Rodaya Yoga Center, but this time it was in France. They opened a new retreat center there, and I had the opportunity to travel to Spain and Portugal, and then spend 2 months in France, and that was 2 years ago. But I'm sharing this particular part of the story as in France, in the south of France in particular, there's huge communities of people who worship and recognize the power of Mary Magdalene, or the feminine aspect of Christ consciousness. And it is told that she lived her years out there with her daughter. And this is where all the tales of the Holy Grail come from, the chalice and the knights, which have to do with the divine masculine, the divine feminine, and the balance, coming into balance between these two energies. And at this time, in a chateau in France, I was participating in a 2-month-long karma yogi program, which also involved doing a daily yoga practice and meditation in the Rodaya style, which is focusing your mind on the anchor of the heart center, and more specifically the spiritual heart center, which is a little bit to the right. Now, while these chakras aren't physical entities in the body, they can be connected to bundles of nerves and energy centers or vortexes, the way our body processes information and circulates energy in our bodies as it's a living organism. And it is this pranic energy in the yogic philosophy that gives life. There's a name for it in every tradition, chi, spirit, whatever you want to call it. It is a life energy that emanates through our bodies while we are in it, that allow us to be animated and to move and to be in this 3D space and time. So at this time, I was having a huge healing around the divine feminine, and I had an experience of visiting the temple of my heart. And in this case, there was a flame there, which is also known as the spark of God. And all of these things were happening intuitively. They were rising in me. And later was I able to connect the dots in regard to archetypal energies of the flame of God that resides in the heart. And that through my experiences, these images that arose in my psyche aren't, or I should say don't belong to me. They're the way that energy is represented and made into understandable symbols or pictures that affect consciousness itself. It is a process of consciousness to evolve. Self-realization is a process of consciousness sprouting or budding into the full realization of its nature. And so while it's very personal, it's very impersonal because it's a shared human journey if we choose to walk it. And as I had this experience, it wasn't until just this week that parts of the picture began to come in more clearly, more strongly, and more vividly, with understanding of the truth that they held, not only for me, but for the process of human evolution and growth and self-realization. And so as I was spending my time there in France, there's often I noticed a lot more representation of Mary Magdalene in churches, where she is at the center of the altar, in contrast to, say, where I was raised in churches where Christ was in the center of the altar. And so the shift in this adoration of the feminine, which was available to me in France and also in Spain, I began to notice that there was more of a balance in regard to the spirituality and how it was approached in regard to these churches. It's a different orientation to both the feminine and the masculine. And so there's also a huge celebration of the feast day of Mary Magdalene, which was actually yesterday. And so when people celebrate a holiday, that's related to a saint or a religious figure, my experience is it's a celebration of our archetypal energy in the human psyche that has been projected outward. It's been disconnected on some level where the power or that archetypal energy is outside of us. But as one of my good friends said years ago to me, that life is supernatural. Our lives are supernatural. When we begin to learn this and accept this, and we can start using the energies in our life, they become fully alive as supernatural forces. And so as I reflected on this yesterday, as the celebration of Mary Magdalene, the feast day, was being celebrated in France and other places in the world where this is more of a tradition than it is in the United States or in other countries, I got very connected, or my attention was brought to the Sacred Heart that Mary often is displayed, as well as Jesus, as having that flame inside of their heart. And I didn't actually put it together in regard to both the water of the experience I had during my first heart opening at Radaya, and my second huge heart opening, which was fire. and having those two elements, water and fire, together in the heart. And both of those elements representing aspects of the feminine and the masculine being together, the fire on the water. And at that moment, it occurred to me that that image that I had in my meditation of altar in my heart and a flame being there, and that whatever I put on the altar of my heart, which was the fire, anything that wasn't true would disintegrate and burn, and anything that was true was indestructible. It was inflammable, I guess the word would be. And so that became my testing center for the truth in my life. I could go to the altar of my heart at any time, and in my meditation tune into that space, and any thought or belief or decision or problem I was dealing with, I could just lay it onto the altar of my heart and let the fire determine the truth of what I was holding on to or what I had been trying to discern with my mind, and that my heart would do the work for me. And it wasn't really work, it was just, that's what the heart does. It sees without eyes. It's able to discern the truth from the lie. And it does so with compassion and love. And that is the true justice. I found that the mind tends to become self-righteous, and the justice is more revenge than looking for balance. And so this is like a full circle for me of this process. Although I'm not done, it's always a spiral, right? Because if we're not evolving, we're going around in circles. And so at this moment, I'm spiraling through this process and recognizing that there is no true balance without the heart, and that the mind is only a servant of the heart. And I don't mean that to dismiss the mind or the masculine, but as in the yogic text describe as the heart as being the true sun, the solar power of our lives, of life itself, and that the mind is the moon, or a reflection of everything that's in the heart. And so the mind is largely powerless. It can only reflect different angles and variations of what's in the heart. And the more distorted the mind is, the less the reflection is accurately shown to us. And so at this time, we are having, today's Friday, the 23rd of July, we are having a full moon in Aquarius, and I am an Aquarius, so it is the number 5, which is the number of humanity. It's the pentagram, it's the 5 senses, and the 6th sense is the divine feminine, which is found in the heart, and the intuition, which has also been connected to the 3rd eye. So at this juncture in time, this energy as an archetype is emerging to cleanse and to purify the mind, so that we might have a more accurate perception of the truth that's in our heart, so we may become a cooperative balance between both of these energies, the masculine and the feminine, in our psyches, And so I just wanted to stop by and share this with you. And as a practice, I invite you to just notice that when you're caught up in your mind or cycling in circles and repetitive thought patterns, worries, concerns, that this is the busyness of the mind, and it's taking your life energy and exhausting it. And at those moments, I invite you to bring your attention to rest in your heart and breathe from this point in your heart. And there's nothing to think about. There's no thing to judge. You're just allowing yourself to be. And this is sometimes in contrast to always pushing away our experience. Like, it's never right, it's never good enough, it's never okay. We're always waiting for something better. When only this problem gets solved, then I'll be able to be present. And it's always a rejection of this moment and this life. And in that way, we are doing a violence to ourselves and by default to the people around us, because our life energy is like a pebble in a pond, and it ripples out and affects all who we come into contact with. And so we're all extremely powerful forces of energy, and our decision to how we use our energy can affect the people around us. And if we aren't aware of this, then we aren't actually making a conscious choice. And this is the crux of the issue, that most people aren't actually making an informed choice about how they use their life energy, because they're not aware of how it works. And this is the kind of work that I do with my clients as an integrative awareness coach, in regards to sharing the construction of consciousness, how archetypal energies work in consciousness, how we can cooperate with them and befriend all aspects of our awareness, so we can bring all those parts of us that we may have been avoiding or rejecting or devaluing as not important because of the society that we live in, that has taught us to look in certain ways and behave in certain ways that aren't necessarily fulfilling or giving us the kind of experiences that we long for with our heart. And that is what called me on my journey to go to Mexico, and the journeys after that to many different other places where I was connecting to the energy of the land, because it had some information for me energetically. And that was all a product of me listening and tuning into my heart. And so I just wanted to share with those thoughts with you today. And I hope you get some ahas, some insights, some value at this time in your life and what's unfolding for you. If you'd like to find out more about my work, you can check out my website at www.mindheart-space.com. And I have on my homepage a little Calendly link, and you can click on it and schedule a free 20-minute consultation with me. And I can discuss with you how I may be of service to you in learning to ride the waves of energy in your life in a productive, cooperative way that produces a greater sense of health and well-being in your heart and your mind, in the space that you inhabit, called consciousness. All right, until next time, please remember what a valuable treasure you are, and bye for now.